Quase 40 testemunhas, incluindo um padre, viram um OVNI e 4 tripulantes, depois da vinheta. Olá pessoal, eu sou o Edson Boaventura Júnior, sejam bem-vindos ao canal Enigmas e Mistérios e hoje a gente está com um caso aí muito interessante para vocês, envolvendo quase 40 testemunhas e o fenômeno se manifestou em 2 dias seguidos. O caso ele é meio antigo, mas envolveu um padre, um reverendo de uma missão lá na Nova Guiné, era a missão Boianai, lá em Nova Guiné, e o fato ocorreu no dia 26 de junho de 1959, voltando a ocorrer no dia seguinte, ou seja, no dia 27 de junho de 1959. Este reverendo anglicano, que chamava-se Booth Gill, ele faleceu em 2007, aos 79 anos de idade, mas antes ele deixou uma gravação dando o depoimento daquele dia que eles observaram aquele fenômeno estrondoso no céu luminoso, algo totalmente inusitado, e inclusive 4 criaturas apareceram, sendo que num certo momento eles chegaram a trocar sinais com esses seres tripulantes daquele OVNI. Então foi algo assim excepcional. Eu vou mostrar para vocês hoje um áudio com o depoimento do padre, legendado aí, para que vocês não percam nenhum detalhe desse caso interessante que ocorreu lá na Papua, na Nova Guiné. Esse caso ele é conhecido da ufologia mundial, inclusive o Dr. J. Heineck chegou a comentar sobre esse caso numa palestra que ele fez no Brasil. E também existe essa publicação chamada Vindos do Desconhecido, do Jacques Loeb e Robert Gigi, que é um desenhista, o Gigi, e ele gosta de fazer quadrinhos, E ele chegou a fazer alguns quadrinhos, 2 páginas, sobre esse caso que aconteceu lá na Nova Guiné. Tá aqui, ó, uma história em quadrinho, acabou virando. Tem vários outros casos, esse periódico aqui, Tem casos brasileiros também, mas esse daqui aconteceu lá com esse padre australiano. Inicialmente, eu vou colocar para vocês aí um vídeo que é da Quest TV, ele é legendado também em português e você vai ter uma ideia de como que aconteceram os fatos. Provavelmente nesse documentário aí, eles estão falando a respeito do caso que aconteceu no dia 26 de junho de 1959, não dando muita atenção para o seu prolongamento no dia 27 de junho de 1959. E na sequência a gente vai estar colocando o depoimento do padre. Agora, uma coisa que eu quero frisar para vocês, na época a RAF, que é a Força Aérea Australiana lá, eles chegaram a investigar o caso e tentaram falar que eram planetas, que eles tinham se confundido com planetas. Também se aventou a hipótese na época que poderia ser algum armamento de guerra, já que os Estados Unidos estavam ali na região, então poderia ter algum armamento, alguma aeronave desconhecida. Eu particularmente não acredito nessa hipótese. Acredito que realmente eles tiveram um contato imediato de 3º grau autêntico e real. Sem mais delongas, vamos ver esses interessantes vídeos.
He saw a bright light to the northwest, which he thought was unusual.
One thing is clear to Father Gill. It isn't Venus.
In fact, he saw Venus to its left. He thought that perhaps it had to be a plane.
But it doesn't act like any conventional plane.
The objects seem to be completely silent.
As it came down closer, they could see it was shining like a halo of light on the underside of the clouds.
That's when I saw it before.
And then, the mysterious object disappears. Father Gill heads back to the mission house
Evening, Father.
to record what he saw.
He was certain that he saw something, but he was sufficiently kind of careful about his observations that he wasn't going to draw any real conclusions about it until he was absolutely certain.
He is soon joined by one of his assistants, Annie Laurie Baroa.
Good evening, Father.
Good evening, Annie.
Annie Laurie was an assistant school teacher at the local mission.
6:45, bright white light sighted amidst...
Father, do you see that?
This time the sighting is much closer.
It was about 500 feet away. There was this one main object, but there was also smaller satellite objects seen in close proximity.
What is it, Father?
Possibly satellites?
Satellites had been launched around the Earth 2 years before this.
We had the Sputnik launches, so that was the only kind of reference point that people had. As this thing approached,
They see a figure on the craft.
That's no satellite.
It was getting closer to them.
the objects moved away, then shot across the bay. It was also witnessed by others. There were approximately about 25 witnesses.
The following evening, Father Gill writes a report to his superiors. Still convinced there's a logical explanation for what he saw the night before.
Father!
But any rational explanation
Father!
is about to be put to the test.
Father! It's back.
Where?
At the beach.
On the beach, Stephen Moy and others have already gathered.
They started watching what appeared to be the same object back again.
Including the same mysterious shape on top. And it's not alone.
There were 4 figures on the top of the craft that were visible to the everybody below, essentially.
These figures were fairly large.
Who are they?
It could be military.
Father Gill was still entertaining the possibility that maybe it was some sort of exotic or advanced aircraft from the Americans.
Is that really military? Possibly.
It wasn't that long after World War II when this occurred, and so America had a large presence in the Pacific. Father Gill decided to initiate communication. One of the figures moved over to the edge.
It was at that point that something very extraordinary happened. One of the figures waved back. Their intention was to perhaps try and encourage it to land. And then they'd really be clear-cut what they were dealing with there.
And then the craft moves out of view, towards the mission house.
Everyone, back to the mission house. Let's go.
Back at the compound, 100 meters from the mission house,
Wow. Oh my God.
the ship hovers silently, as if waiting for further contact.
Father Gill tried an additional experiment.
object then slowly began to move back and forth in a pendulum-like fashion.
It was just purely imitating the motion or the movement of the flashlight backwards and forwards.
And then the show comes to a stop.
The object sort of slowly moved off into the cloud cover.
All right, everyone back inside.
It seemed to me with the many discussions I had with Father Gill over the decades, that from his own religious beliefs, maybe this was like an angelic kind of experience.
In total, 25 witnesses signed Father Gill's report on the strange sightings of June 26th and 27th, 1959. 6 months after the event, Air Force personnel interview Father Gill and attribute what he saw to a celestial phenomenon, the planet Venus. Noted UFO debunker Dr. Donald Menzel agrees, adding that Father Gill is known to be nearsighted. But that argument doesn't explain the other 25 witnesses. The 1959 sightings in New Guinea lead to the first credible witness report of extraterrestrials in UFO history.
One of the most credible witnesses we interviewed was an Australian minister, the Reverend William Gill, posted before the time of his sighting to the Anglican mission in Boianai, Papua New Guinea. One night at 7:45, as he stood with 38 other people at the edge of the mission playing field, every one of them saw the same thing.
Can you imagine what it's like to look up in the sky and see a totally foreign-looking object there just hovering, not very far high up, maybe 200 or 300 feet up in the air, and glowing, and two bipods jutting out from behind it, from underneath it, and sparkling all around, and some figures up there. This solid-looking object, and figures walking about on top, and not the slightest noise whatsoever. And so we waved. Wouldn't it be wonderful if we could get this object down onto the playing field? And as we waved, wondering whether we'd get some recognition and whether perhaps they would understand what we wanted, they waved back. So I asked a boy to go quickly down, bring me a torch, bring me a pencil, bring me paper, and return as quickly as he can so that I can get any other events that occur, and minute-by-minute movements, so that at least we'd be able to talk about it the next day. And this he did, very, very quickly. He brought it back, and he brought the torch and put the torch on and shone it to the craft. And as he did so, he waved moved the torch this way, and we were dumbfounded when we looked at the craft, and the craft was as though it was responding to the torch. It began to do this too, like a disc-shaped object, just moving the same way, responding to the movement of the torch. Next day, just prior to the evening service, about 7 o'clock, the thing was there again. It had arrived about an hour earlier, and we all decided to have the normal evensong that we do have on those nights, because, well, the thing was out there outside the church anyway, and we felt it wouldn't go away during the service, and it didn't. When we came out, there it was, still up in the sky. And so for another hour or two we watched. And then suddenly it did go. And there was this amazingly incredible speed that the whole craft disappeared to nothing across the bay in a matter of a second or so. Well, now, what are we to think of this kind of phenomenon? People claiming to see things such as I did. There were 38 of us, and we all believe that we saw it, but of course we don't expect other people to believe us if they don't want to.
Então, pessoal, o que vocês acharam? Eu achei indescritível, formidável esse tipo de contato que o padre e mais aqueles moradores da ilha tiveram com aquele objeto voador não identificado e também com os seus tripulantes. Então, se você gostou desse vídeo, clica no joinha aí. Se não é inscrito no nosso canal, se inscreva no nosso canal, nos acompanhe aí nas redes sociais, deixe o seu comentário porque é muito importante para nós e até o próximo programa com o Edson Boaventura Júnior.